She was standing on a creaking wagon, like a broken mule led to market, her head covered in rough burlap, her bare feet cut and bleeding on the planks, hands tied tight in front like a convict put on display. And the men, oh, they were bidding on her, like she was nothing but a game piece. $1, a barrel-bellied man bellowed, spittle shining in his beard, laughter thick and sour in his throat. A real savage, yours to break forever. The crowd howled like hyenas, old drunks with cracked skin red from the sun, and the stink of whiskey rolling off them, young ones too with dust on their boots, and emptiness in their eyes. At the edge of it all Jonah Whittaker stood, his pulse hammering like war drums. He had seen ruin before, in the trenches of Shiloh, in the faces of boys gasping their last breaths. But this was evil wrapped in applause. He should have walked away. Men like him always did. Keep your head low, let the world rot. But then the girl stumbled, her knees folding once, just from the weight of shame. That broke something in him. $1, Jonah said. Quiet, flat, steady. The mob hushed like someone smacked the sound out of them. The trader sneered, sold to the lonely rancher. He spat in the dirt, mocking, as Jonah climbed the wagon. Knife in hand, he cut the ropes and pulled off the sack. He expected a hollow thing, a victim, a ghost, but what he saw was fire, eyes burning like amber, shoulders stiff and squared, not broken, not beaten. That look would haunt him forever. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but the moment he touched that rope, Jonah bought more than a woman. He'd bought himself a war. On the road home, Jonah didn't speak, not because he was trying to be mysterious. Truth was, he didn't know what the hell to say. 7 years alone since Clara passed. He'd grown used to silence. Some days he even preferred it. But now he had company. Not any company. A woman who hadn't spoken a single word since he freed her. She didn't cry, didn't thank him, didn't even look afraid. She just walked barefoot behind his horse, like it meant nothing at all. By the time they reached his land, the sun was sinking low. The ranch looked smaller than usual, like it was ashamed of itself. Jonah felt the same. He pointed to the weathered barn. You can stay there. There's water and a cot. She gave no sign she heard. That night Jonah couldn't sleep. The silence wasn't his silence anymore. It had weight, a pulse, a presence. Morning came. He left cornbread and coffee on the porch. By noon, the plate was empty. For 3 days, neither of them spoke, but things shifted. One dawn, he noticed the gate latch fixed tighter than he'd ever managed. Another evening, his ripped shirt lay neatly sewn, stronger than before. Jonah started talking, not to her, but just out loud, about the cattle, about the weather, about the ache in his knee. No answers came, but he knew she was listening. Then came the storm. A monster of a storm. Black clouds rolling, wind howling like a locomotive. Jonah sprinted to the barn, herding the cattle, and there she was standing at the doorway watching the sky like it was her sworn enemy. Get inside, he shouted. She didn't move, not until lightning split the sky. Jonah grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the cabin, slammed the door against the roaring wind. They stood there drenched, hearts hammering. For a heartbeat Jonah saw it, fear in her eyes. Not the iron fire, not the survivor's mask. Fear, vulnerable, human, and it shook him more than thunder ever could. If you're still listening at this point, friend, maybe you're the kind who believes in stories that still carry weight. If that's true, do me a kindness. Hit that subscribe, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Trust me, it keeps these tales alive. After that stormy night, something unspoken shifted between them. Not through promises, not through talk, but through presence. Each dawn, Jonah left bread and coffee on the porch rail. By midday the plate was always gone. Soon after she began sitting on the steps. Never close, never far, just there. The silence had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was alive. Her name came not from her mouth, but from her hand. One morning, Jonah found the old saddle he had lost weeks back, set neat on the porch rail, and beside it, drawn softly in the dust, a prairie flower. That night, Jonah pulled Clara's old botany book off the shelf. Page 62. There it was, a lyra, a flame-colored bloom. In the language of her people, it meant enduring fire. The next morning, as Jonah set the plate down, he spoke it softly. A lyra. She didn't flinch, didn't look up, but from that day on, each time he said it, her gaze lingered a second longer. 3 mornings later she spoke. Just one word. Jonah. His name, steady, calm, carried like music through her lips. It froze him cold. For years he hadn't heard his name spoken by another soul, and in that moment, it was like something in his chest cracked open. They didn't talk often. They didn't need to. Together they worked the land. Her silent touch in the kitchen, weaving steadiness where there had been none. His calloused hands on the fences and fields, building, repairing, reshaping. At night, Jonah read aloud by lantern glow. His voice stumbled over the pages, rough and unused. Sometimes she smiled when he mispronounced a word. That smile was enough to keep him going. They were building something, not fast, not fragile, something slow, something honest. One quiet evening, as Jonah sharpened a hoe by the barn, Alira walked up. Her hand slipped over his. She didn't say a thing. She didn't have to. For the first time in years, Jonah felt like a man who wasn't just surviving. Had he known what was coming, he might have sharpened a rifle instead of that hoe. But peace never gives a warning before it's stolen away. Stories like this remind us quiet moments matter. If you felt that heartbeat too, if you've ever seen silence turn into something alive, don't forget, drop a comment, press like and subscribe for more. These are the tales that keep the West breathing. By then, whispers had already started in Dry Creek. Word about Jonah and that prairie woman spread faster than prairie fire. What began as murmurs turned to scandal. And in those whispers was the name of a man Jonah hadn't seen since that day. Mason Briggs. Word travels quick in small towns. Faster than wind. Faster than truth. And in Dry Creek folks didn't need much to keep their tongues busy. At first it was just murmurs that widower brought home an Indian woman. Then it grew. Some called it scandal. Others laughed like it was a joke. But Mason Briggs, he took it as an insult carved deep. Mason was the one who had dragged Alira into town that day. He thought it would be quick. Sell her, drink hard, ride off. Instead, a quiet rancher had stood up, paid his $1 and walked off with her. And Mason was left the fool in front of everyone. Now every time Jonah's name was spoken it came with snickers. And Mason's pride was rubbed raw like an open wound. A man like that doesn't forgive. He waits. He stews. And when the time feels right, he strikes. One dusty afternoon, Jonah noticed a cloud rising on the horizon. Not the kind that brings rain, the kind raised by hooves. 4 riders moving fast. Jonah set down the fence post he'd been mending. "Alira," he called, voice steady but low. "Inside, bolt the door." She looked up from her garden, saw the dust, and without a word slipped into the cabin. The riders thundered closer. They didn't slow, didn't hesitate. Mason rode in front, half drunk, mean grin stretching across his face. "Afternoon, Whitaker," Mason said, spitting Jonah's name like it was filth. "Heard you been playing house with stolen goods." Jonah didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. "She's not stolen," he said, calm as stone. "She's my wife." The words hung heavy in the air. He may be not true on paper, but true where it mattered, deep in the heart. Mason laughed sharp and ugly. "You think that changes anything? She belongs to the town. We paid for her once. We'll take her back now." He slid from his saddle, hand drifting toward his belt. But Jonah already had his rifle in hand. "Steady, sure, she's not going anywhere," he said. "Leave, or find out just how serious I am." For a breath the only sound was the prairie wind through the grass. Then the cabin door opened. Alira stepped out, not with a weapon, not with fear. She wore a faded blue shawl Jonah had once left for her. She walked to his side, stood tall, head high. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was louder than any bullet. Mason froze. His eyes moved from Jonah's rifle to Alira's unshaken stance. And for the first time he saw something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not weakness, but 2 souls who had already survived storms he couldn't imagine. He muttered something under his breath, bitter as bile, and stepped back. The other riders didn't argue. They hadn't come for war, they'd come to scare, and they'd failed. By the time their dust faded across the horizon, Jonah hadn't even lowered his rifle. He just turned to Alira, and nodded once. That night, words weren't needed. The danger had passed, but something else had settled in its place. Not just safety, not just relief, but peace. The kind you fight for, the kind you earn. And friend, if you're still here, maybe you've felt that kind of peace too. the kind you hold tight because you know the world can snatch it any second. If you have, then don't forget, hit that subscribe button, tap like, and leave a comment. Let's keep stories like this alive. Seasons rolled by. The ranch grew, so did they. Her garden bloomed wild and strong. His hands grew rougher, steadier. Together they built not from what was lost, but from what they chose to keep. And that, my friend, was the real heart of the West. Seasons rolled by. The ranch grew, so did they. Her garden bloomed wild and strong. His hands grew rougher, steadier, and together they built not from what was lost, but from what they chose to keep. Dry Creek still whispered. Some folks never did understand, but the whispers lost their teeth because Jonah and Alira stopped giving them power. They had cattle to tend, fields to mend, and quiet evenings to share beneath the prairie sky. Sometimes they spoke of the past, of the day she was brought to town, of the storm that nearly washed her away, of the men who thought they could break them, but mostly, they spoke of tomorrow, the calves that would be born in spring, the seeds Alira wanted to plant come fall, the life they were making, bit by steady bit. And if you'd seen them, you might not have thought much. Just a rancher and his wife, working side by side on a lonely stretch of land. But if you looked closer, you'd see something rarer than gold. Not wealth, not power, not even freedom, but love, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't need a name carved into stone, the kind that survives storms, whispers, and the cruel hands of fate. So when the sun set on Dry Creek, and the wind carried across the wide open plains, it carried their story too, a story of silence turned to trust, of pain turned to strength, of strangers turned to home. Then that, my friend, was the real heart of the West. And if this story touched you, even just a little, don't let it end here. Tap that like button, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more tales from the heart of the West. Because sometimes, the wildest frontier isn't out there on the prairie, it's inside us.